Commodore Rel Tarson gazed upon the holographic display that illuminated his private quarters aboard the Emerald Fawn. The star charts of the Orovon galaxy stretched before him, billions of worlds conquered across millennia, all united under the efficient governance of the Galrix Empire. Among those stars, a small, insignificant pinprick of light was highlighted. The solar system, home to what intelligence labeled as Earth. A primitive civilization at the precipice of true galactic awareness. Computer, replay the briefing on species 4572, again, Rel commanded, straightening his immaculate uniform adorned with the platinum insignias of the Imperial fleet. Species 4572b designation humans have recently achieved Level 2 plasma containment, approximately 3.4 galactic standard cycles ago, the emotionless voice responded. Per Protocol 19C, this qualifies the species for preliminary protection and integration into the Imperial hierarchy at Service Tier 7. Rel smiled thinly. Protection was the Empire's euphemism for gentle conquest, installing advisors, introducing controlled technological advancements, and gradually absorbing the species into the ever-expanding Galrix machine. It was a process he had overseen dozen times before, earning him rapid advancement through the ranks despite his relatively young age of 87 standard cycles. Commodore, his communicator chimed. We're approaching the outer boundary of the system-designated soul. Estimated arrival at primary assessment position in 17 minutes. Very good, Lieutenant Vec. I'll join you on the command deck shortly, Rel replied, dismissing the holographic display with a casual wave. This assignment would be simple. Assess, establish first contact protocols, deploy containment fields if necessary, and begin the integration process. In 2 standard cycles, he would likely be promoted to Vice Admiral for adding yet another species to the Empire's collection. What could possibly go wrong with such a routine assignment? The command deck hummed with efficient activity as Rel strode through the sliding doors. 20 crew members worked in synchronized harmony, their movements precise, their communications limited to essential information only, just as the Imperial Fleet Handbook dictated. Commodore on deck, Lieutenant Vec announced, his young face beaming with admiration. The lieutenant was barely 45 cycles old, still enthralled with the glory of the Empire and eager to prove himself. Status report, Rel commanded, taking his position in the central command chair. We're entering the Sol system now, sir. Scans indicate 8 major planetary bodies plus numerous smaller objects. The species' homeworld is third from the central star, a Class C dwarf. Initial atmospheric scans confirm nitrogen-oxygen mix, extensive hydrosphere. Technological emissions consistent with early interplanetary exploration capacity. Rel nodded. Exactly as expected. Very good. Set course for standard observation orbit around the 6th planet. Its extensive ring system should provide adequate concealment while we... Commodore, the sensor officer's voice cracked with alarm. I'm detecting an anomalous structure near the 6th planet. Rel frowned. Define anomalous. It's large, sir. Approximately 2.7 kilometers in length. Métallique composition. It appears to be an artificial construct, but... The officer hesitated. But what inside? Rel demanded, irritation edging into his voice. It doesn't match any known design parameters in our database. The construction appears crude, sir. No recognizable Imperial or known rival signatures. A murmur passed through the command deck. The first breach of protocol Rel had witnessed in years. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Put on the main display, he ordered. The holographic projection in the center of the deck flickered to life, displaying a massive, angular object. Its hull was rough, uneven, with bulky protrusions and visible seams. Nothing like the sleek, mathematically perfect curves of Imperial vessels, or even the organic shapes favored by the few independent species permitted their own spacefaring technology. What is that monstrosity? Rel whispered, rising from his chair to circle the projection. Unknown, sir. But it's moving. changing course. It appears to be approaching us. Rel felt the first flutter of unease in his chest. Impossible. They shouldn't have detected us yet. Our cloaking systems. Sir, the communications officer interrupted another unprecedented breach of protocol. We're receiving a transmission. From the object, the command deck fell silent. Put it through, Rel ordered, his voice suddenly dry. A crackling sound filled the deck, followed by a clear, confident voice speaking in perfect galactic standard. Greetings, Galric's vessel. This is Captain Anyasol of the human spaceship Leviathan. Welcome to the Sol system. We've been expecting you. Rel felt the blood drain from his face. This was not possible. This was not in the briefing. This was not how first contact was supposed to proceed. The Empire made first contact. The Empire controlled the narrative. The Empire. Sir, Lieutenant Vec whispered. What are your orders? Rel swallowed hard. Verify that transmission. Run a full spectral analysis. Check for technological abnormalities or deception. The sensor officer worked frantically at his console, then looked up with wide eyes. Verification complete, sir. The transmission originated from the vessel. And, sir, preliminary scans indicate weapon systems. Active weapons systems. That can't be right, Rel muttered. They should be barely capable of reaching their own lunar satellite. The crackling voice returned. Commodore Rel Tarson of the Emerald Fong. We are transmitting coordinates for a safe approach vector. Our defensive systems are currently in passive mode, but will respond automatically to any unauthorized maneuvers. We look forward to establishing diplomatic relations with the Galrix Empire. Silence fell over the command deck again. They knew his name. They knew his ship. Sir, Lieutenant Vec whispered. How should we proceed? Rel stared at the crewed vessel on the display. Everything about this situation defied protocol, defied understanding. He straightened his shoulders, the weight of imperial dignity settling upon them. Contact Central Command. Priority Alpha. Inform them we have encountered an anomalous situation requiring immediate strategic consultation. For the first time in his career, Commodore Rel Tarson was afraid. Central Command's response was swift and decisive. Within 6 hours, a small fleet of 5 additional Imperial vessels had arrived at the coordinates, a show of force that typically preceded the subjugation of particularly troublesome species. Lord Inquisitor Prown, a senior member of the Imperial Council, had taken personal command of the response fleet aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominion. Rel stood rigidly at attention in the dreadnought's strategy chamber, acutely aware that his career hung by a thread. The holographic projection of the Leviathan rotated slowly in the center of the room. This is unprecedented, Lord Inquisitor Prown stated, his ancient face creased with concern. At over 300 cycles old, he was one of the most experienced strategic minds in the Empire. Our intelligence indicated the humans were at least 70 cycles away from achieving interplanetary travel, let alone constructing vessels of this magnitude. There's more, my lord, Rel said carefully. They appear to be aware of the Empire. They address me by name and rank. Prown's eyes narrowed. Impossible. We've maintained strict observation protocols. No contact team has ever been dispatched to Earth. Nevertheless, they knew who we were, Rel insisted. And their vessel appears to be armed. Armed with what? Prown scoffed. Primitive projectile weapons? Chemical propellants? The strategic officer cleared his throat. Actually, my lord, preliminary scans indicate some form of electromagnetic mass acceleration technology. Crude, but potentially effective. Prown waved this away. No matter. Our shields are more than capable of repelling such primitive attacks. Our primary concern is the intelligence breach. How do they know about us? And how have they advanced so rapidly? There is one way to find out, Rel suggested. They've invited us to send representatives aboard their vessel for diplomatic talks. Prown stared at him as though he had suggested they all strip naked and dance. Enter a primitive vessel? Subject ourselves to their hospitality? Preposterous. With respect, my lord, Rel said carefully, our directive is to establish contact and assess integration potential. Despite their unexpected technological level, That directive remains unchanged. The Lord Inquisitor considered this, stroking his ceremonial chin implant. You make a valid point, Commodore. And as the officer who initiated this contact scenario, the responsibility and risk falls to you. Rel suppressed a grimace. As he had feared, he was being volunteered to risk his neck. I am honored to serve the Empire, my lord. Excellent. Proun smiled thinly. You will lead a delegation aboard this Leviathan. Assess their technological capabilities, determine the source of their intelligence about us, and evaluate their suitability for integration. Or, if necessary, their threat level. And if they prove hostile, then the fleet will reduce their vessel to its component atoms, Proun said simply. And afterward, their planet. The shuttle approached the Leviathan with cautious precision. Up close, the human vessel was even more bizarre than initial scans had suggested. Its hull was patchwork, comprising different materials and construction techniques. Some sections gleamed with polished efficiency. Others appeared almost haphazardly attached. Visible welds and rivets marked the surface, an aesthetic the Empire had abandoned thousands of cycles ago as inefficient and inelegant. It looks like it was built by children, Lieutenant Vec remarked, unable to keep the disdain from his voice. Remember protocol? Rel snapped. No oferais de observations. Yes, sir, Vec replied, chastened. But how does it even fly? It was a good question. By all Imperial engineering standards, the vessel shouldn't be capable of spaceflight, let alone interplanetary travel. Yet here it was. Approaching docking bay, the pilot announced, receiving automated guidance signals. Through the viewport, Rel watched as a massive door on the Leviathan's hull slid open with surprising smoothness, revealing a well-lit docking bay. Their shuttle was gently guided inside by invisible forces. Artificial gravity detected. The sensor officer reported with surprise. Atmosphérique composition. Within Imperial safety standards. Temperature. Comfortable. The shuttle settled onto the deck with a soft thud, and Rel took a deep breath. Remember your training. We represent the Galrix Empire. Dignity and authority at all times. The delegation of 5, Rel, Vec, a security officer, a xenobiologist, and a technical specialist, disembarked onto the deck of the Leviathan. They were met by a small group of humans in matching dark blue uniforms with various insignias and badges. At their center stood a woman of medium height with dark skin and sharply intelligent eyes. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and she wore a uniform with more elaborate markings than the others, clearly denoting rank. Commodore Rel Tarson, she said, stepping forward with a confident smile. I'm Captain Anya Sol. Welcome aboard the Leviathan. Rel performed the formal imperial greeting, a precise inclination of the head and positioning of the hands. On behalf of the Galrix Empire, I extend greetings to your species. Captain Sol performed a different gesture, extending her right hand forward. On Earth, we shake hands when meeting, a sign of peaceful intentions, showing we hold no weapons. Rel hesitated, then awkwardly extended his own hand. The captain gripped it firmly and shook it once before releasing. I must admit, Rel began carefully, we are surprised by your technological advancement. Our intelligence suggested your species was still confined to planetary travel. Anya's smile widened slightly. We find it's often advantageous to be underestimated, Commodore. Now, shall we proceed to the conference room? We have refreshments prepared that should be compatible with your physiology. As they walked through the corridors of the Leviathan, Rel's technical specialist was openly scanning everything with a handheld device. This doesn't make sense, he whispered to Rel. The internal technology is a mishmash of advancement levels. Some systems appear to be using quantum computation principles we'd recognize as reasonably advanced, while others are using physical switches and analog displays. Is that a problem? Asked one of the human escorts, a young man with an open, friendly face. It's unusual, the specialist replied cautiously. Technological advancement typically follows predictable patterns. Oh, we don't much care for predictable patterns, the human said cheerfully. We tend to use whatever works best for each specific application. Sometimes that's a fancy touch interface. Sometimes it's a good old-fashioned toggle switch that won't fail even if all power systems go down. Rel exchanged glances with Lieutenant Vec. This pragmatic approach contradicted every principle of imperial technological development, where aesthetic unity and theoretical elegance were paramount. They arrived at a large conference room with a view of the stars through a surprisingly massive transparent viewport, a structural weakness no imperial ship would permit. A long table was set with various containers of food and drink. "Please be seated," Captain Sol invited them. "This is my second-in-command, Commander Luis Reyes, and our ship's artificial intelligence interface, Hermes." A holographic figure appeared at the table, a stylized human male dressed in ancient-looking robes with winged sandals. "Greetings, representatives of the Galrix Empire," the hologram said. "I'm programmed to facilitate communication and provide information as needed." Rel couldn't help himself. "Your artificial intelligence chooses to manifest as a mythological figure?" The hologram smiled. "I find the symbolism appropriate. Hermes was the messenger of the gods in ancient Greek mythology, known for his cleverness and ability to move between worlds. AI personality constructs are prohibited in the Empire," Lieutenant Vec blurted out. "They're considered inefficient and potentially destabilizing." "How fascinating," Hermes replied. "I find my personality construct essential to effective communication with humans, who respond more positively to entities they can relate to emotionally." Captain Sol interjected smoothly. "I'm sure we have many such cultural differences to discover. But first, perhaps we should address the elephant in the room." "There is no large mammal present," Rel stated, confused. This caused several of the humans to suppress smiles. "It's an expression," Captain Sol explained. "It means an obvious issue that no one is discussing. In this case, you're surprised at finding us more advanced than you expected." Rel straightened in his chair. "Yes, our intelligence indicated your species had only recently achieved level 2 plasma containment. A vessel of this size, capable of interplanetary travel, represents a significant discrepancy." "Ah, yes. About that," Captain Sol said, exchanging glances with her officers. "We discovered quite some time ago that certain broadcast emissions from our planet were being monitored. Once we identified the source, we implemented a strategic misinformation program." Rel felt a chill run down his spine. "You deliberately falsified your technological development data?" "We prefer to call it selective disclosure," Commander Reyes interjected. "We broadcast what we wanted you to see." "But why?" Lieutenant Vec asked, clearly struggling to understand. Captain Sol leaned forward. "History, Lieutenant. Human history is filled with examples of technologically advanced civilizations encountering less developed ones. The results have rarely been positive for the less advanced group. The Empire brings order and efficiency," Rel stated firmly. "We elevate species to their maximum potential within the galactic community. As defined by the Empire," Captain Sol replied pointedly. "We prefer to approach any first contact from a position of, let's call it, relative strength." The technical specialist cleared his throat. "Even so, Captain, our scans indicate propulsion and weapons technology that shouldn't be possible given your species' industrial base. The power requirements alone. Would you like a tour of our engine room?" Captain Sol offered unexpectedly. "I think you might find it educational." Lord Inquisitor Prown's face on the communication display couldn't hide his dismay. "A compressed matter reactor? That's absurd, Commodore. Such technology is theoretically possible, but requires materials science at least 1,000 cycles more advanced than their current level." Rel struggled to keep his voice steady. "Nevertheless, my lord, that's what their chief engineer showed us. A functioning compressed matter reactor providing power to the entire vessel. And the containment shell appeared to be constructed of, I can barely bring myself to say it. Out with it, Commodore. Reinforced aluminum foil, my lord." There was a long silence from the other end of the communication. Finally, Prown spoke, his voice tightly controlled. "Commodore, are you suggesting these humans have solved the compressed matter containment problem something our best scientists have struggled with for centuries. Using a material commonly used for food preservation? They call it reinforced aluminum titanium alloy nanomesh. But yes, essentially that's correct, Rel confirmed. Their chief engineer seemed quite proud of the solution, calling it elegantly simple. Prown's face flushed with anger. This is either an elaborate deception or they found technological solutions that we overlooked because they didn't conform to imperial design philosophy, Rel finished quietly. The Lord Inquisitor's eyes narrowed dangerously. You sound impressed, Commodore. Rel chose his next words carefully. I am reassessing my understanding of technological development paths, my lord. Their approach is unorthodox, but appears to be effective. I want proof, Prown snapped. Authorize Cruiser Vigilant to perform a low-power weapons test against an unpopulated section of their vessel. If this compressed matter reactor and hull material are as advanced as they claim, they should easily withstand a level 2 energy discharge. Rel felt his stomach tighten. My lord, they've been cooperative thus far. Such an action might be perceived as hostile. Are you questioning a direct order, Commodore? No, my lord. I'll transmit the authorization immediately. As Rel ended the communication, Lieutenant Vec approached, his face troubled. Sir, is it wise to test their defenses? What if they retaliate? With what? Rel replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Even with their unexpected level of technology, they're still centuries behind our weapons systems. The Vigilant will use minimum power, just enough to verify their hull integrity claims. Vec didn't look convinced. There's something about these humans that makes me uneasy, sir. They seem too confident. Rel had the same feeling, but orders were orders. He transmitted the authorization code to the Vigilant, along with precise coordinates for the weapons test, an uninhabited section of the Leviathan's outer hull. The response came almost immediately. The Vigilant reported successful targeting and discharge of a level 2 energy weapon. And then, nothing. Report from the Vigilant, sir, the communications officer announced. The human vessel shows no damage, not even surface scorching. Before Rel could respond, an alert klaxon sounded. The Leviathan is powering weapons systems, the sensor officer shouted. They're targeting the Vigilant. On the tactical display, Rel watched in horror as the crude human vessel oriented itself toward the Imperial cruiser. There was a brief energy spike, and then, impossibly, a simple kinetic projectile launch from the Leviathan at enormous velocity. The Vigilant's shields flared brilliantly as they attempted to deflect the primitive attack. For a moment, it seemed they would hold. Then, to the shock of everyone on the command deck, the projectile broke through, striking the Vigilant precisely at its design junction between the command module and engineering section. The Imperial cruiser split nearly in half, secondary explosions blooming along the rupture line. Impossible, Rel whispered. The Vigilant had state-of-the-art Galrix defensive systems. How could a simple kinetic weapon? His communicator chimed. It was Captain Sol. Commodore. Her voice was calm but steely. Please convey to Lord Inquisitor Prown that we consider unprovoked weapons discharge to be an act of aggression. The response you just witnessed was automated and calibrated to disable rather than destroy. The Vigilance crew have approximately 30 minutes to evacuate before their reactor containment fails. I suggest you dispatch rescue vessels immediately. Rel struggled to find words. How? How did you penetrate our shields? Your shields are designed to diffuse energy weapons and deflect objects moving at relatively low velocities, Captain Sol explained, as if lecturing a student. Our main railgun accelerates projectiles to roughly 0.1% of light speed. Your shields simply weren't designed to handle that much kinetic energy concentrated in such a small area. And you targeted their structural weak point deliberately, Rel realized. Of course, we've had ample time to analyze Galric's ship designs from long-range observations. The modular construction approach is efficient for building and maintenance, but it creates predictable structural vulnerabilities. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just built an unexpected spacecraft. They had studied Imperial vessels, identified their weaknesses, and developed weapons specifically designed to exploit them. Captain Sol, Rel said carefully, I must inform you that the Empire will view this as a hostile action. And we view unprovoked weapons fire as a hostile action, she countered. However, we remain open to diplomatic resolution. Perhaps this demonstration will help convince Lord Inquisitor Prown that we should be talking as equals rather than as conqueror and subject. As Rel ended the communication, he looked around at the stunned faces of his officers. The Empire had never encountered a primitive species that could stand against their technology, let alone one that could defeat it. Sir, Lieutenant Vex said quietly, what are your orders? Rel took a deep breath. Dispatch rescue vessels to the Vigilant, and inform Lord Inquisitor Prown that our assessment of the human technological capacity requires significant revision. The mood in the Imperial Strategic Chamber was somber. The Vigilant's crew had been evacuated successfully, but the loss of an Imperial cruiser to a supposedly primitive species was unprecedented. Lord Inquisitor Prown paced the chamber, his face drawn with concern and anger. This changes everything, he muttered. If word of this spreads through the Empire, other subjugated species might begin to question our technological supremacy. Rel stood quietly, waiting for the inevitable blame to fall on him. To his surprise, Prown seemed more focused on the strategic implications than on finding a scapegoat. What do they want? Prown demanded suddenly. They must have demands, objectives. They've proposed a treaty, Rel answered. Non-aggression and technological exchange. Exchange? Prown scoffed. What could they possibly offer us? Their approach to technology is different, my lord. They seem to favor practical solutions over theoretical elegance. It's possible they've developed applications we haven't considered. Prown narrowed his eyes. You sound impressed again, Commodore. I'm being objective, my lord. Their ship shouldn't work according to our understanding of physics and engineering principles, yet clearly does. At minimum, it suggests gaps in our knowledge. The door to the chamber slid open, and a senior science advisor entered, looking agitated. My lord, we've completed the analysis of the weapon used against the Vigilant. And Prown prompted impatiently. It was a metal rod, my lord. Tungsten, approximately 20 centimeters in length, 5 centimeters in diameter. Prown stared at him. A metal rod destroyed an Imperial cruiser? When accelerated to sufficient velocity, yes. The principles are simple Newtonian physics. The kinetic energy of... Prown cut him off with a wave. Spare me the scientific lecture. Are you telling me our vessels are vulnerable to sticks of metal? Only when propelled at significant fractions of light speed, my lord. But yes, essentially. Rel watched the Lord Inquisitor's face carefully. The man was experiencing the same cognitive dissonance that had struck Rel earlier. The uncomfortable realization that Imperial technological philosophy might have critical blind spots. We need time, Prown finally declared. Time to analyze their technology, adapt our defenses, and develop an appropriate response strategy. He turned to Rel. Commodore, you will return to the human vessel. Inform them that the Empire is considering their proposal for a non-aggression treaty. And am I authorized to begin preliminary discussions on such a treaty? Rel asked carefully. Prown's expression hardened. You may create the appearance of good faith negotiations. In reality, you will gather as much intelligence as possible about their technological capabilities, fleet size, and defensive systems. Understood, my lord. As Rel turned to leave, Prown added, and Commodore, find out if that monstrosity is their only vessel, or if they have others. The Empire needs to know exactly what we're facing. Captain Anya Sol received the news of continued negotiations with measured satisfaction. She invited Rel and his team to a more informal gathering in what the humans called a recreation area, a concept foreign to Imperial vessels, where off-duty personnel were expected to remain in their quarters when not working or eating. The space was filled with comfortable seating, game tables, and even a central area where some crew members were engaged in physical exercise. Most shocking to Rel, officers and enlisted personnel mingled freely, without apparent regard for rank or station. Your crew structure seems unusual, Rel commented as Captain Soul handed him a beverage. Hierarchical when necessary, collaborative when possible, she replied. We find it improves morale and problem-solving. Fascinating, Rel murmured, then steered the conversation toward his primary objective. I couldn't help but notice we haven't encountered any other human vessels during our time in your system. Is the Leviathan a prototype? Something flickered in Captain Soul's eyes. Amusement? One of a kind in some ways, certainly, though I wouldn't say we're limited to just one vessel. The holographic form of Hermes appeared nearby. The captain is being modest. The Leviathan is indeed our flagship, but it represents only a fraction of human space capabilities. Rel tried to keep his expression neutral. Indeed, your species has constructed a fleet, then? Captain Soul smiled enigmatically. Let's just say we believe in being prepared for all contingencies. Speaking of which, Commander Reyes has prepared a draft of our proposed non-aggression treaty. Would you care to review it? The change of subject was obvious, but Rel accepted the data tablet offered to him. As he scanned the document, his eyes widened. The treaty not only established mutual recognition and non-aggression, but proposed designated territories and specific protocols for technological exchange. This is comprehensive, he admitted. We've had some time to consider our position, Captain Soul replied. While your empire was watching us, we were watching you. Lieutenant Vec, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly asked, How? How did you know about us before we made contact? Captain Soul exchanged glances with Hermes, then seemed to make a decision. We detected your observation satellites approximately 80 Earth years ago, she explained. They were well hidden, but not perfectly so. Once we knew to look, we found more evidence of extraterrestrial monitoring. Rather than announcing our discovery, we established a counterintelligence program. 80 years. Rel was stunned. You've known about the Empire for that long? And been preparing accordingly, Hermes added. It gave us time to develop technologies specifically designed to counter potential Imperial aggression. Like your railgun, Lieutenant Vec said. Among other things, Captain Soul nodded. We've specialized in high-velocity kinetic weapons because our observations suggested Imperial defenses were optimized against energy attacks. We've developed communication methods that can bypass Imperial encryption, and we've established manufacturing facilities in locations your surveillance would be unlikely to detect. Such as, Rel couldn't help asking. Captain Soul smiled that enigmatic smile again. Let's just say the dark side of Neptune's moon, Triton, offers excellent privacy. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just built one ship. They had an entire hidden infrastructure, and they'd been developing it specifically to counter Imperial technology for decades. I must confess, Rel said carefully, Lord Inquisitor Prown is concerned about the potential destabilizing effect this situation could have on the Empire. If other species learn that humans have successfully resisted Imperial integration. You mean if they learn your technology isn't as superior as you claim? Captain Soul corrected him gently. Yes, Rel admitted, surprising himself with his candor. It could undermine the foundational principles of the Empire. Perhaps those principles need some undermining, Hermes suggested. A system based on technological intimidation rather than mutual benefit seems inherently unstable. Rel found himself unable to disagree. His experiences aboard the Leviathan had already begun to shake his faith in Imperial superiority. The humans' pragmatic approach to technology, their collaborative social structure, their strategic foresight, all suggested a species that might indeed be worthy of equal partnership rather than subjugation. I will convey your draft treaty to Lord Inquisitor Prown, Rel promised. But I must warn you, acceptance may not be immediate. We understand, Captain Soul replied. Empires rarely change course quickly. But perhaps you could remind the Lord Inquisitor of a human saying, those who cannot bend will break. The Empire did not break, but it certainly bent. 3 cycles of tense negotiations followed, during which the Imperial fleet maintained its position at the edge of the Sol system, neither advancing nor retreating. Additional vessels arrived, bringing the total to 15, a significant show of force, but one that Captain Soul and her crew seemed remarkably unconcerned about. On the final day of negotiations, as the treaty was being prepared for formal signing, Rel found himself alone with Captain Soul in a small observation room overlooking the docking bay. "There's still one question you haven't answered," Rel said quietly. "How did your species advance so quickly? Even with knowledge of the Empire's existence, the technological leap is extraordinary." Captain Soul considered him for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Necessity and diversity, Commodore. When we realized we weren't alone in the galaxy, and that the dominant power might not have our best interests at heart, we united in a way humanity had never managed before. But the technical challenges were overcome because we approach problems differently than your empire," she finished for him. "Your civilization values uniformity, standardization, theoretical elegance. Ours thrives on diversity of thought, practical solutions, and an almost irrational willingness to try the impossible." She gestured toward the Leviathan visible through the viewport. "Your scientists would never have attempted a compressed matter reactor with an aluminum alloy containment shell, because theory said it shouldn't work. Our engineers tried it anyway, found that it did work, and then figured out why afterward. That approach seems chaotic," Rel observed. "Chaotic, yes, but also creative." Captain Soul smiled. "The universe is vast, Commodore. Perhaps there's room for more than one approach to understanding and navigating it." Rel found himself nodding. "Perhaps there is." Later, as the treaty was formally signed aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion, Lord Inquisitor Prown maintained a rigid dignity that barely concealed his discomfort. The document recognized the Sol system and its immediate stellar neighbors as sovereign human territory and established protocols for limited technological exchange and diplomatic relations. "This is unprecedented," Prown muttered to Rel as the ceremony concluded. "The first time in over 3,000 cycles that the Empire has treated a newly discovered species as an equal. Perhaps it will prove beneficial, my lord," Rel suggested cautiously. "Their technological approach is refreshingly different." Prown shot him a sharp look. "You've changed, Commodore. Your experiences aboard their vessel have altered your perspective." "I prefer to think they've expanded it, my lord." As the human delegation prepared to depart, Captain Soul approached Rel one last time. "This is just the beginning, Commodore. I hope we'll have the opportunity to work together again in the future." "As do I, Captain," Rel replied, surprised to find he meant it sincerely. "Oh, and before I forget," she added with a casual air that immediately put Rel on alert, "you might want to inform Lord Inquisitor Prown that the commissioning ceremony for our second deep space vessel, the Behemoth, is scheduled for next month. Perhaps the Empire would like to send representatives?" Rel felt a chill run down his spine. "Second vessel? I was under the impression the Leviathan was unique." Captain Soul's smile widened just slightly. "Oh, the Leviathan is certainly one of a kind. The Behemoth is actually twice its size. Different design philosophy entirely. And the Colossus after that, well, that's still on the drawing board, but our engineers have some truly fascinating ideas they're eager to implement." With that parting revelation, she rejoined her delegation, leaving Rel to contemplate a future far different from the one he had envisioned when this mission began. The Empire would adapt. It had to, but the days of unquestioned superiority were over. As the human shuttle departed the dreadnought, Lieutenant Vec appeared at Rel's side. "Sir, do you believe her? About these other vessels?" Rel watched the shuttle disappear into the distance, heading back toward the ungainly, yet somehow magnificent Leviathan. "I believe, Lieutenant, that humanity has only begun to show us what they're capable of. And I believe our previous understanding of technological development was unnecessarily limited." "What will this mean for the Empire, sir?" Rel considered the question carefully. "Change, Lieutenant. Uncomfortable, but necessary change. The galaxy is larger and more complex than our philosophy has acknowledged. Perhaps it's time we expanded our perspective." Somewhere in the vast darkness beyond Saturn, hidden from Imperial sensors by the clever application of principles the Empire had never thought to explore, the framework of the behemoth was indeed taking shape. And beyond that, in workshops and laboratories across Earth and its colonies, human ingenuity continued to flourish, unfettered by theoretical constraints or uniform expectations. The Galrix Empire would never be the same, and that Commodore Rel Tarsin was beginning to think might not be such a bad thing after all.